My name is Jared Colin. I'm a council representative with Oregon AFSCME Council 75. I have been with Council 75 for approximately 4 years. Previous to that, I was a corrections officer with the Oregon Department of Corrections for about 10 years between two prisons, Coffee Creek Correctional Facility and Deer Ridge Correctional Institute. I wanted to become a corrections officer because at the time, I was looking at a new career and I was always interested in law enforcement. Before going into the facilities, if I recall correctly, my first week or two, it was on-the-job training. After that, we had about 40 hours of new employee orientation. And then I think it was within my first 6 months of working in the department, I was sent to the academy in Salem and spent 6 weeks in training down there in various things of handcuffing, defensive tactics, firearms. None of the training I ever received helped me deal with what would eventually become the mental capacity of having to deal with the inmates or the work itself. I go back to that word intimidating. The first few months in the facility were intimidating. I was working housing units that were, they were 150 some odd inmates, and I was the only staff member on that housing unit most of the time. And these are murderers, rapists. I mean, it's the worst of society has to offer. So, and I'd never been in an environment where I was constantly working with people that have harmed people. So, there have been so many traumatic events in my career as a corrections officer. What I just spoke about was one of them. There have been many others. I spent 3 years working in the MHI, the Mental Health Infirmary, which houses the most severely mentally ill inmates in the facilities. And in those units, I remember one day where an inmate had tried to kill herself. She was on suicide watch and didn't have anything in her cell, but somehow a straw from a broom got swept under the door or something, and those are hollow. And she had opened up a vein and shoved it into her arm and was bleeding out. And when we got there, there was so much blood on the floor. But not only that, I mean, there's been other instances in those housing units where you have to go in after someone has smeared fecal matter all over the cell and wall and themselves, and you have to go in and contain it. And it's just not a normal thing to do. And it sticks with you forever. I remember another one, and this is what ultimately led to me being diagnosed with PTSI, is I was working the SEG unit one night. And after a couple hours of shift, I remember thinking that something's not right. Something's not right in this housing unit. And you just kind of get this sixth sense of after you work in a prison for a while. And I got to the last housing unit on the bottom tier, and she had hung herself. I had him open the cell, and I broke protocol because you have to have a second person there, but I broke protocol. She was purple. I was able to cut her down. I was able to do a sternum rub and calling for response, and people and medical staff finally got there, and she survived. But the look on her face and how purple she was, it'll never leave me. I still have nightmares about it. And that's ultimately why I ended up going to talk to someone. After most instances, you just have to go back to work. You may get time to write your report, but you don't have time to mentally decompress. That's, you go home and you do it. And unfortunately, a lot of us take that home with us, and it starts affecting our families. I became such a horrible person to live with that I think my wife ended up giving me an ultimatum at one point: if I need to go talk to someone, or it's over. I was running my house like a housing unit, and my kids like inmates, and my wife like inmate, and that's just not a way to live. Because I just became such a horrible person to deal with, because constantly I was reliving these things. I I was thinking about it. I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it. You know, the horrible things I've seen, the blood, the feces, the people trying to hurt themselves and kill themselves, and you just can't get away with it. I remember one day at Deer Ridge, and I don't know what set me off, but I had a massive panic attack on the housing unit, and going back to that hyper masculinity and just fighting through the problem. You know, military men deal with this. You just fight through, and you take care of the task at hand, and I did. But by the end of the day, I looked like I was wearing a burqa. I had my hood covering my face, a hoodie, and I live in Central Oregon, so, you know, a face mask. All you could see was my eyes. And somehow, my doctors, my therapists, don't know how I made it through the shift. I made it almost 7 hours like that. And I ended up having to go to the emergency room to get some anti-anxiety meds, because I don't know what set me off, but something did, and it was horrible. It was the worst feeling I've ever had. The first time I went and talked to someone and sought help about what I was dealing with was really tough. And quite honest, you know, I didn't even tell them the whole story the first time, because in the back of my mind it was that whole, oh crap, I'm going to be labeled crazy. I'm a weaker person for this. So it took me a couple sessions to really get my feelings out and what I was thinking out. After that, after 2-3 sessions, I think, with her, I saw her constantly I think I saw her once or twice a week for 6 months, which I'm assuming that's a lot. I don't have any comparison. But after that, I was able to taper off. But it was also tough to talk to my doctor when I first needed to go on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, because, you know, again, it's one of those, I'm going to be labeled a crazy person. None of us ever want to share or show vulnerability, and that's why a lot of people don't do it. You have to be strong. What did it for me? It wasn't strength for myself, it was strength for my family. I didn't want my family to be broken up, or I didn't want to go through a divorce. And, you know, since then I have a granddaughter, and I wouldn't have known my granddaughter. Wherever you need to find that strength from, find it. And because you're having thoughts or feelings, you're not a weaker person. Quite honestly, I think you're a stronger person for having to deal with this. We're strong people because we're the kind of people that, we're not those people in an emergency situation that run away from the fire or the fight or the accident. We're the people that run to it and don't run away from what's going on in your head. Go at it, attack it, get the help you need. If you don't, then we see it all the time. There's a higher rate as corrections officers of any profession in the country. There's a higher rate of divorce and suicide in corrections officers. And I think both of those are because of, a lot of them are because mental health. Well, obviously the suicide one is, but if those people would have got the help that they needed in the time they needed, I think a lot of those could have been averted, and a lot of those officers could have been here. So yeah, in the past couple of years, those 80 people that have put in for PTSI under workman's comp claims, only 3 of them have been approved. The state or safe will always come up with a reason why it was something else in their life. You know, they may come out and say, well, you had a drinking problem before. Oh, but your drinking problem could have been caused by your divorce 2 years ago. And now, you know, we don't know whether what you're dealing with right now wasn't a result of all that stuff. When in reality, all that stuff may have been caused by them being corrections officers. If PTSI can be approved under a qualifying event for a SAFE claim or for a workman's comp claim, I think far more people will be helped, and in the long run, it will help the system, the state system, the mental health system, people's marriages. People are looking for help. If I sat down with my legislators, I would, and I have before, I would tell them my stories. You know, we take legislators on tours, and they see a prison that's operating, but they don't see the horrible things we have to deal with. They don't see that these guys or these people are, some of them there want to hurt us. Some of them there don't want us to go home to our families. They don't see the trauma that we've all had to deal with. They don't see the people trying to kill themselves. They don't see the blood. They don't see the feces. They don't see any of that. And that's what they need to see. I wish no one ever had to see that stuff. But the reality is without people understanding, it's just not going to change. I don't think I'll ever have closure with some of the things I've seen. I've learned how to deal with them. I don't think I'll ever forget